You sit at the table, a sumptuous meal laid before you, guests of your host, the Count Strahd von Zavarich. He sits at the top of the table, with an amused smirk on his face, his eyes never leaving yours, always making eye contact, an unerring gaze, like a cat with a mouse. Finally, you muster the courage to ask him a question, and you summon your resolve and meet his gaze.
So tell me, Count, how do you feel about the lies that you've caused? The misery that you sow?
The Count doesn't even flinch. He meets your gaze and simply replies,
Does the wolf concern himself with the bleating of sheep?
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Barovia. Well, maybe not Barovia, but certainly welcome to Level 10 NPC. My name's Stephen, and I'm your host and your guide in this channel, where we'll drill down into the minutiae of turning numbers and statistics in your character sheet into playable player characters. Now, I've set up some mood lighting tonight because I want to set the scene. We're going to be making a character for the big one, in my opinion, the best written adventure from Wizards of the Coast, the CoS of Strahd campaign. Everything about this adventure is epic. The characters, the land, the setting, the mood, the pacing, the skill curve. Perfect adventure. From start to finish, from level 1 to level 10, to the climactic battle between you and Count Strahd von Zavarich. It's just the best adventure. The character we're going to make tonight is a tortured soul. A poor soul with ghosts that haunt him, both figuratively and literally. His name is Jacob Tresner, and this is his tale. First things first, when I think coming to make a character for CoS of Strahd, the name of the character is probably an important decision to make, because it has to sound right, it has to fit in with the aesthetic of the world. So we're going to be looking, maybe go to a gothic horror name. So we're just going to type in the search bar here, gothic horror, and see what we get. Gothic names, ghost town names, creepypasta and horror story names, book titles, monster names, mansion names, kingdom names, Victorian era names, and that maybe. Because I gotta say, I haven't had a look at gothic names and they weren't that great. Let's have a look at Victorian era names and see what we get. Hugo Taberner, Seth Farrell. Quite ordinary pedestrian sounding names, aren't they? We want something a bit more fantasy and gothic. Let's have a look at something else. Let's see. Fantasy and folk. Vampire names. Vampire names. Classic, of course. Why did I think of this? There we go. Cyrus, Dorlus, Ciro, Gale, Tresner. You know what? I'm going to take Tresner because that's like a combination of Trent Reznor from 9 Inch Nails. Tresner. Jacob Tresner. Sorted. Right. Next step. Here we come. Okay, guys. Well, here we are back at D&D Beyond. This is going to be our character here, Jacob Tresner. And just to show you how to set the game up, character preferences, switched all these off, dice rolling. I'm making a lot of use of the optional features in this character build just to show flexibility of making a character on D&D Beyond. It doesn't always have to be standard array. You can use the point build system, and this is as close to like a min-max character as I would like to get. I've made him a half-elf, and this is where we start to use the options. I've selected the origin ability score increase. Ordinarily, a half-elf would get a +2 to his charisma and a +1 to 2 other stats. We are going to circumvent that option by selecting the ability score increase, one ability score increase, and we get to pick what that stat is. And because he's a rogue, we've chosen that to be dexterity. I also chose the origin languages because the languages that they were giving us were pretty obscure languages, and I wanted them to at least to be able to speak Elvish, being half Elfish. Right, I've set this at level 3 because I want to indicate that he is going to be a soul blade rogue. You have your proficiencies when you start your character. Acrobatic, stealth, investigation and perception. This isn't a combat rogue, this is going to be a utility rogue, and by that I mean he's a skills guy. He has lots and lots of skills. Should go back to race, actually. Half Elf has an ability called Skill Versatility, and I have chosen History and Religion. In my class, I have 4 proficiencies. I have chosen Acrobatics, Stealth, Investigation, and Perception. They also get Expertise, and that means double proficiency bonus on their investigation, or on 2 skills, and I've chosen Investigation and Stealth to be my expertise. Get a Sneak Attack, and they get Thieves' Cant. I always think of Thieves' Cant to be like Cockney rhyming slang, like the way Artful Dodger speaks to Oliver in the Oliver Twist movie. It's a good example of Thieves' Cant. Your Cunning Action. This is your 2nd level ability. You can take a bonus action to dash, disengage, or hide. And at 3rd level, we chose the Roguish Archetype, Soul Knave, which came from Tash's Cauldron of Everything, I believe. The thing about the Soul Blade is he produces psychic energy, and it focuses into, or it manifests into, blades that he uses in combat. Pretty cool aesthetic. It does give off quite a superhero vibe, this character. Okay, so we went for the point buy. I've already set up the stats, but I will show you. Every character in the point buy starts at 27. Now, because he's a rogue, he doesn't need to be strong, and because he's not going to be the face of the party, he does need to be charismatic. So that leaves us 4 stats that we can spread the 27 points around. Being a rogue, you have to have dexterity. Straight up the top, 15 dexterity on that. And I want to be really smart. I want to be intelligence based. That's why I took the skills that I took. 15 and 15. That leaves me 9 points remaining between the other 2. I would put, I think, 12 into wisdom and 13. Yes. That stat line gives me a high dexterity bonus. +1 on my constitution, so that's an extra hit point, which is always important. I like not dying. 15 intelligence gives me a high intelligence modifier for my intelligence based skills, and the wisdom modifier for perception. Like I said before, he isn't the combat monster and he isn't the face. Ability score increases half health. Now, because we used the optional ability scores, we can apply a +2 to our dexterity, and then I can apply a +1 to my wisdom and a +1 to my charisma, leaving me a final stat line of 8, 17, 12, 16, 14, 8. And that's pretty healthy, good modifiers for the skills that are important to this rogue, to our fella Jacob. Into the description, and this is the other min-max modifier that you can configure to suit yourself. I have made a background and I've called it a cartographer, for want of a better description. I have given him the option of 2 skills and 2 tools, and I have given him the background feature of the Haunted One, and because I wanted the character when I first started thinking about making a character for Strahd, there is the character option in the book, and it is the Haunted One, and it just fits in with the sort of gothic horror vibe of the game. So the skills that I chose for the cartographer were Arcana and Nature, and the 2 proficiencies that I chose for my cartographer were Cartographer's Tools and the Navigator's Tools. Now, these are never really going to come into play in the game. What this really means is my character can write, read, and draw maps. And the features for being a Haunted One, you have this, haunted visage that unnerves people. And you have a specific set of characteristics, suggested characteristics, which I selected from my choices, and we can read about them here. Personality traits. I don't talk about the things that torment me. I'd rather not burden others with my curse, and I put no trust in divine beings. This is a tortured soul. This is somebody who suffers from night terrors. Something haunts his dreams, and he can't get rest, and he has lost faith in the divinity because of the things that he is experiencing, and there's nothing coming to stop it. Ideals. I'll stop the spirits that haunt me or die trying. This ghost, this torture that plagues his mind, the psychic energy that manifests in his hands. He's not having a good time, this guy. His psyche is flawed. Something has happened. Some trauma in his past has happened to him, which is leading him down a very dark path. He believes that there's an evil in me. I can feel it. I must never set it free. Whatever this night terror is, whatever these haunted dreams, he believes there is some sort of evil trying to manifest, and he is at odds with himself, trying to contain it. And he feels no compassion for the dead, the lucky ones. At least the lucky ones, because the dead, they don't dream. And we would then select our equipment, which I have already done. Basic thief stuff. I haven't given him any extra equipment for being 3rd level, but I probably would if I was going to be running him in the campaign. And that would give us our character sheet. Here we are, Jacob Tresner, level 3, 21 hit points, stat line as discussed. He's only wearing leather armour, he's got a 13 armour class, a +3 initiative for his high dexterity. And that would set us up pretty nicely for 4th level for taking one of those hybrid talents. It gives me a +1 to my dexterity plus some kind of ability, and then at level 8 just dumping the 2 points straight into dexterity. So by level 8 Jacob will be looking at a 20 dexterity and quite an effective psychic rogue. But the thing about this character, the build about this character is this: it's the stats, the proficiency bonuses, and all the skills that I have. Acrobatics, Arcana, History, Investigation at +7 because he's expertise, +5 in Nature, +4 in Perception, +5 in Religion, and +7 in Stealth. But the other ones aren't to be sniffed at. The only things that he's suffering a negative on are the athletics for the strength and all the charisma based skills. But like I said, Jacob isn't going to be the one leading the discussions in the game. And that is that. We would then now go on to trying to make this character a suitably tragic and haunted backstory. And we'll get on with that in the next part. See you soon. So here we are in my sources section of D&D Beyond, where all the rulebooks are stored. And I have Xanathar's Guide to Everything open. And then Xanathar's Guide to Everything, we have the character options section. And there's some tables to roll on here. I've already rolled on them, so just going to quickly go through the results and show you them on the PDF that we have put together. So into the Rogue chapter, and there's a couple of tables to roll on. Every rogue has a guilty pleasure, and Jacob's is a smile from a pretty face. The reason for this will become apparent throughout the course of the backstory. His adversary is the proprietor of an illegal pit fighting arena where you once took bets, and his benefactor was a magistrate who once kept you out of jail in return for some information on a powerful crime lord. To link that back to the pit fighting proprietor, and Jacob turned him in to keep himself out of trouble. The next thing we look at is the This Is Your Life section, and there's several tables to roll on here. Knew who my parents were. He is a half-elf, and one of my parents was an elf, the other was a human. And when I rolled my birthplace, I was born in home. And when I rolled siblings, I rolled 6 siblings on this table here. When I rolled my birth order, I landed right in the middle of the pack. 3 were younger than me, 2 were older. He was an infamous middle child. And the birth order I just talked about. Family and friends, I had an adoptive family. That's why I rolled on. So I had absent parents. I rolled on absent parents, and your parent died. Roll on the cause of death, supplement the table. The cause of death was an accident relating to their occupation, and their occupation were farmers. So I decided that Jacob's parents died in a farming accident. They were trampled in a stampede. Tragic death. Classic. Family lifestyle, they were poor. The adoptive family were poor. They had 5 children of their own, there's no wonder. Childhood home was a small house. My childhood memories, I had a few close friends, and I lived an ordinary childhood, so nothing too dramatic there. Probably had a few kids that he ran around with, probably the other children in the family. Because there is no background table for the haunted one here, I just rolled on the criminal option. I fell in with a gang of reprobates ne'er-do-wells, and I learned my specialty from them, I think is what I rolled. Either that or I fell in with a gang of thieves. In my class training I became a rogue because An experienced rogue saw something in me and taught me several useful tricks. Probably my mentor taught me how to be a soul blade. Events by age. Now I rolled should just go here and ended up with one life event. The life event was an adventure, and the result of the adventures was I was terribly frightened by something you encountered and ran away, abandoning your companions to their fate. That was it. That's all that we had to roll for our guy here. So the next thing would be take you to the life path that we've written. And here it is, all the numbers and all the results from the tables put on there so you can see how we ended up with what we've got. And then quick stop over at cooltext.com. Got ourselves a suitably gothic looking banner for our character, and now it's the story of Jacob Tresner. Jacob Tresner is a tortured soul. A troubled past and a deep sense of abandonment have twisted this once bright lad into a reclusive introvert. Obsessive and driven by past mistakes, Jacob strives to steady the ship in his stormy sea of guilt and remorse. Born to an elven mother and a human father, Jacob was a slight child. Quite the opposite of his father, himself a broad-framed ox of a man. His mother, of whom Jacob inherited the slight frame, was responsible for a lot of Jacob's early schooling. The seeds of an educated and quite brilliant mind started to grow in those early years. Jacob's parents were farmers in the Dalelands, and Jacob's early obsession with reading and poetry often placed him at loggerheads with his father. His father believed that Jacob needed to get out more and put some meat in those bones, while his mother, who was the soothing word of reason in the fractious household, mollycoddled the boy and encouraged his learning, knowing the life of a farmer was an honest one, but hardly a lucrative one. If Jacob showed enough promise, he might earn a place in a good school, maybe in Cornmere or Waterdeep. Jacob's life was turned upside down, however, when his parents were trampled by the cattle herd. An owlbear had wandered onto their land and caused a stampede that claimed his parents' life. Jacob was the sole inheritor of the farm, but he was too young to make any claim on the property. He was adopted by the farmhands family, they themselves with a large brood of their own. Jacob suddenly found himself thrust into a family dynamic he had never known, and slap bang in the middle of a pack of children. He didn't stay long at the little farmhand's house. He headed for the Sword Coast, his head full of dreams of academia. Sadly, like a lot of runaways and vagrants, Jacob never reached his destination. He met and fell in with a gang of thieves. Before long, Jake, as he liked to be known now, was another young thief plying his trade around the great city of Waterdeep. An older member of the guild recognised the potential in Jacob and set him aside and started teaching him the secrets of the soul blade. The guild had a job, an easy B&E gig. Jake was to be their second story guy, get in and open up the old mansion for the rest of the mob to rob the place blind. That didn't go to plan though, as when he got into the old house, it turned out that the old place was still haunted by a terrible spectre. It scared the boy nearly half to death. Jacob turned tail and fled, leaving the rest of the gang to fend for themselves. Without his mentor and the air of suspicion hanging over Jacob from the other thieves that Jacob had sold them out, his time with the guild was terse, to say the least. Couple that with the fact that he had started to have dreams about the spectre and the death of his mentor. These dreams, or more accurately, nightmares, only began to increase in their intensity. Soon he was dreaming about the death of his parents as well. Jacob began to slide into himself and withdraw from the world. Eventually his miserable life with the guild was presented with an exit. He was pulled up before a magistrate who gave him a deal, turned in the other guild members, and he would see to it that Jacob got some medical help and a place to stay in relative anonymity. Jacob took the deal and relocated to a small village to the west of Waterdeep. The priory where he was to receive his help was remote enough for him to get some rest, but not much. He soon began dreaming of a foreign land, quite unlike the lands he had seen in the Sword Coast, of a handsome general and his beautiful bride. Often Jacob would wake and start to sketch these lands from his dreams. He could never get the name. It seemed just infuriatingly out of reach. In the morning, he would study these maps, this unknown land. At night, he would stare out of his window and try to stay awake, but he would succumb to his exhaustion, and the dreams would start again. So there we go, there is the backstory for Jacob Tresner, Edgelord Deluxe. Has all the classic hallmarks of a rogue character: dead parents, troubled past, on the run from a thieves guild, all these great things that you can springboard your your dramas from. So the next thing we do now is we'll go to the unpack section of the video where we'll look a little bit deeper into the backstory. We'll talk about some of the things that you can possibly have a story arc coming off of from that. I'll see you in a few. Okay, so now we went to the Clumsily titled Things We Made Up Learned About Jacob. The first thing on my list here is the sole inheritor of a farm. Jacob has property. He has a reason to stop adventuring at the end or have something to retire with. He has a family business that he could quite easily return to and adopt and take on. That gives your character something to look forward to at the end of their adventuring life, should they make it to the end of their adventuring life. And though it might not seem like a particularly fabulous way to finish your adventuring career, it's certainly a lot safer than going up and fighting undead or vampires. Keep that in the back of your character's mind when he's playing the game. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Well, I have a life to lead. I want to go back to it. Second thing I have written down here is the Angry Thieves Guild looking for revenge. Now, I imagine that the proprietor of the illegal fighting pit is not going to be too pleased with our boy Jacob for selling him out to make his life a little bit easier. And if any thief is worth his salt, they are going to know people who know people, and certainly they would know people who would know people that are responsible for relocating people who give evidence. Effectively, if you want to look at it from a modern day point of view, I know a guy who knows somebody in Witness relocation program who can tell us where this guy is. So even though he's in a priory and he's recovering, chances are the people who need to know where he is, and they will come looking for him eventually. That is not a closed chapter in Jacob's life. There has to be some repercussions for that betrayal. The next thing I've written down there is the ally in the magistrate, or is he just another user? Did he just use a young scared boy to catch a bigger fish, throw him out for bait, not really caring about what happens to another thief? As far as he's concerned, it's one more thief off the streets of Waterdeep. If they take care of their own, he got what he wanted out of it. He got a career bust, if you like. Or you could just flip that around and say that he was genuinely looking out for our boy Jacob. He did feel sorry for the lad, and he is doing all he can to make sure that boy receives all the help he can get. It's really just down to how you and your DM want to play that. Do you want to play it down another tragic card in your deck, or is this actually a beacon of hope, something to look forward to, somebody who's actually trying to help the guy? He has dreams and nightmares that haunt him. Death of his parents, the death of his mentor. He feels guilty about these things. He just doesn't know how to express it, and he's withdrawn into himself. As we looked at his backstory, or his roles, he believes that he is carrying a great darkness within him, a dark passenger that he has to keep in control, and if he doesn't keep it in control, people get hurt. What became of the rest of the gang that he fled? Did they die? Are they still out there? If they did they die a horrible grisly death? Would they come back as revenants? There's another plot hook that could easily show up in a Strahd game. I'm not going to be coy or flippant about this, because this is dealing with some pretty serious issues here, and it's not something that should be taken lightly, and they shouldn't be taken on lightly. But we are talking about a character here who possibly potentially has trauma, actual trauma, PTSD, or mental health issues. You could roleplay that. You could attempt to roleplay that kind of character. The last point is always character reference points. Dexter, Monk. Dexter being the serial killer with the dark passenger, and Monk being the brilliant but dangerously flawed detective. Right, that's it for the unpack. And the next thing is just a little wrap up and a discussion about the character in general. See you soon. Okay guys, so there we have all the parts we need to make the character, and we did a little unpack video as well. This is Strahd. This is CoS Strahd. Your characters need to be of a certain type. They need to be of a certain mindset. You want to approach that campaign with a certain maturity. There's no point going into that campaign when you would go into a regular D&D campaign with maybe a little bit of levity. You will have fun playing the Strahd campaign, but it's a different kind of fun. There's a suitably gothic tale to be told here, and it can be quite frightening in the right hands. Let it frighten you, let it take you on that journey. Conquer the fear, conquer the story, and conquer Strahd. I wish you all the luck in your adventures, adventurers, and until next time, may all your adventures be filled with fun, frolics, and fortunes.